Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
We welcome you in. That's the big voice guy. That's what I like to call him, with my main man, JP, Jacob Padilla, with another week of Nebraska Preps. It's a lot going on. There were some marquee name matchups, but the games didn't really kind of turn out to be that way for a lot of the folks. Outside of Class B, where I felt like there were a couple, including Waverly and Scott, that lived up to the billing.
I think the two that we kind of highlighted, Bennington Norris as well.
Yeah.
Almost 100 points in that one. But, yeah, we had some good matchups in B. Hopefully looking forward to some more this weekend, just kind of looking at some of the best games for the week ahead. It looks like B might be have two of the best ones we'll see this week as well.
Yeah, we'll figure out a lot about Elkhorn, right? I mean, that because we don't really know much. We know they lost a ton. But kind of feeling their way along. It seems like in B, the top probably 3 or 4-ish maybe. You've got, I think Waverly will end up being right there. You like Scott, you like Plattsmouth, you like Bennington. What do we do with Aurora?
That's a good question. They're going to Scottsbluff this week. I don't know that we'll learn a ton from that game just compared to what they've already done, but
not the start that I think most folks in that community thought that they were going to get off to.
No. I mean, put up 44 points and lose. That's got to hurt.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's a tough start to the season. Obviously, they've got some talent. We'll see if they can kind of turn it around here. Obviously, B's a pretty small class, so you get hot a little bit. You can make a nice little run there and put yourself in good position if they can kind of turn things around.
Should I adjust my rearview mirror and start finding Plattsmouth? Listen, I know Scott and Bennington get all the talk, but quietly, especially with guys like Meneses, they're getting good quarterback play. I mean, talk about a good quarterback falling in your lap, transferring from Papio South. I mean, Plattsmouth is definitely on my radar.
Yeah, Nate Kramer in there at quarterback. Rough first week, but they didn't really need him to have it, and he was efficient in week 2. And obviously, Christian Meneses carrying the load again this week, just running all over Ralston.
For a guy that size, he runs behind his pads. He's not a big guy, but he's a heavy runner.
300 yards and 5 scores on 25 carries. Yeah. Not a bad day of work.
Yeah, picking up where he left off from a season ago, where I was pretty impressed with him.
Yeah, obviously he was, again, one of the guys that we talked about quite a bit last year. Yeah. And Plattsmouth is back for another year, and he's still toting the mail. And speaking of toting it, geez, we mentioned Bennington putting up 55 points, but Dylan Mostek again.
At some point, somebody's going to have to get him to the ground.
All right. 64 carries for 708 yards and 10 touchdowns in 2 games.
Yeah.
64
he's
for
well
708 and 10 touchdowns.
Well on his way to closing in on some records. You know, it is unbelievable how he's been able to I mean, you know it's coming, and you still can't really stop it.
No.
32 carries in 2 games on average, right? I mean, that's a good high school workload. That's a good collegiate workload. That's a fantastic NFL workload for everybody not named Derrick Henry.
Oh, and he had a 39 against Aurora this past week.
Yeah.
And it is kind of interesting just looking at Bennington in terms of where they belong in that top tier. Giving up 44 points, you needed every one of those carries to kind of hold on because Aurora is making a push down the stretch there.
Yeah,
and then,
it's a good football team, right? Not a very user-friendly schedule to start. So they'll have time, and it's a program that's used to winning. You assume that they won't panic, right? They'll kind of stay the course and looking to kind of get hot here because I don't want to bury them just yet, but between Bennington, Plattsmouth, and Scott, I mean, Scott in a slugfest with Waverly, fantastic matchup.
Well, and then kind of started getting some points there late with both teams finally finding the end zone. Scott held on there for a 27-24 win in overtime.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Back-to-back years where that thing's gone down to the wire.
That's turned into a nice rivalry.
Yeah.
Quietly, kind of snuck up on me, right? I look for, a little more local, but Waverly is having none of it. I mean, they have they have done their best to step up to the plate.
And Waverly, they hit a big touchdown late to tie it up, right? Yeah. With like less than a minute left or something to get it to overtime. So, that's like you said, that's developed into a really nice rivalry. Got to make sure to put that one on the calendar every single year now, just based on what they've been showing recently.
Really good intensity. I think the crowds embrace it too. And as we jump over to Bellevue West, number 1 ranked Bellevue West, they coast. Turned into the L.J. Richardson show, but probably the most impressive performance of the week was Millard South and how they handled Elkhorn South with relative ease.
Yeah, that's the game I was at, and obviously both teams are kind of figuring some things out up front on both sides of the ball with what they lost from a year ago, but the difference in that game was quarterback and Gage Stenger. He was the best player on the field and consistently made plays when Millard South needed it. They couldn't get the running game going. Yeah. Christian Nash had 20 carries on 6 yards. That was all Stenger on the ground. Some of it designed, some of it just
a few broken plays.
Play. Yeah, he had a couple third down. He had a 3rd and 12 that he picked up 20 yards on, and then had the 16-yard run on 3rd and 6 for the touchdown. He had a 27-yard touchdown run that
was a thing of beauty.
Wiped off because he was pointing at the defender on his way into the end zone. So
that penalty occurs en route to the touchdown. It's not going to stand.
They called it at the 2-yard line, so he got 25 yards minus a 15-yard touchdown, and then they yanked him, sending the backup quarterback, and then they run the double reverse with Antrell Taylor hitting Kozel in the end zone for the touchdown.
Got a lot of respect for that offensive staff, and I think now that they feel like they can throw the ball a little bit, their creativity is starting to shine. They've been known for a long time. Coach Long, that staff with Coach Means, they do a really good job of mix and matching offensive concepts. It's a tough team to prepare for.
Yeah, and then you add, again, a skill player like Taylor, who they used in a lot of different ways. He had a nice little 55-yard screen touchdown play where he broke a tackle or two and then just took it to the house.
And now you're getting Gasaway times 2 with both Jake and Justin.
Yep. Jake had nice little jump ball touchdown in the end zone. Stenger just throw it up to him. He went up for it, tipped it to himself, and had the presence of mind to pull it in and hold on to it for the touchdown. That was an impressive performance just between Stenger and the weapons he has available to him. Again, he's still wondering about the running game against the best opponents they'll face because they really couldn't get much going in the trenches.
They will be tested next week.
Yeah.
They're going against a very good defense and easily the marquee matchup, which will be Millard South and Bellevue West.
Yeah, so they got to take on Millard West this week first. You got the rivalry, but working towards that one. I was impressed with Millard South. I think it was Millard South 3, Elkhorn South 4 going into that game, and Millard South definitely outclassed the Storm on.
How would you describe Elkhorn South's maybe ability or maybe inability to utilize some of their skill?
Yeah, it
was a little bit of some mismatches in the open field, which I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, they just couldn't ever get into a rhythm offensively in the passing game. Corey Wilkie only had 1 catch. It was nice one-handed.
Yeah, he needs multiple targets.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like they had a few other guys that they had some drops. They had some off-target passes, a couple of interceptions. One of them was a 3rd down, kind of an arm punt or whatever. But they just couldn't get into a rhythm. I know Lance Rucker had a pretty good day up front.
Who has been relatively quiet. He flies under the radar for a really good player.
Yeah, and be remiss not to mention what Maverick Noonan did. Talked about Stenger
those
being
first 3 series.
Yeah, talked about Stenger being the best player on the field. I think that what was more impressive what he did was because he was under pressure all night long because they could not block Noonan. There was one play where
you got the sense early on as you're like, boy, this is going to be a long night. They have no answer for Maverick Noonan.
Yeah, he had a series where tackle for loss and then a sack back into a 3rd and long, and they got off the field. And there was the most impressive rep I think I saw from him. Didn't end up in a sack, but it was I think Mike Sauter tweeted out a video of it, but just kind of getting around the end low, shoulder.
Yeah,
bend.
how about the bend?
Yep, and then delivered the throw just as Stenger was releasing the ball and forcing an incompletion there. Like that was I was like, whoa, just watch.
Big time.
So that play right there kind of shows you what kind of a pass rushing prospect he is, and he's playing some right tackle, was in on their 4th down conversion. So he looks every bit the part of the prospect that people are talking about him as.
Elkhorn South going to have to bounce back in a hurry as they travel to a place I think it's an underrated place to play. Well-coached football team and Coach Tomlin. They've got to go to Grand Island. That's not going to be easy. That's Southeast.
Yes.
It has Grand Island. I keep thinking Elkhorn Southeast has Grand Island.
Central for the Storm. So coming off that tough game against Gretna, if you want to talk
We were talking about that kind of off pod. Surprised at the level of physicality in which not only Gretna played with, but the lack of physicality in which Central did. That one was probably the stunner of the week.
Yeah, Zane Flores, 20 for 25 for 218 yards, a touchdown, and 12-yard rushing touchdown. That's not a surprise. The Omaha Central, 30 carries for 30 yards on the ground. That was the surprise. And Jalen Lloyd got loose, 4 catches for 100 yards at a 64-yard, I think, touchdown.
Maybe the best kept secret in the Metro. We know about him as a triple jumper.
Yeah.
And he's a fantastic athlete.
Yeah. But they didn't really have anything else going. Just completely shut down that running game that was so good in week 1.
Yeah, they're kind of an enigma. I feel so. There's 3 actually, and strangely enough, they're all Metro teams. Burke was impressive hanging on against Kearney.
Finally got Devin Jackson going.
North, better than the score would probably indicate. Without question, the best defensive line tandem in the state with Orlando and Seantre Brown. Keyshawn Williams was spectacular. They played with a backup quarterback who I felt like was really, really good. He was, they converted 70% of their third downs, which
that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's not good when you're on the defensive side at Omaha West Side. I still feel like the picture's incomplete with them. They're still learning to play football, but maybe more talented than the 0-2 record would indicate. They played 2 good football teams in Southeast and West Side.
And they've been in both games, just haven't been able to play the full 48 minutes.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Got out to good leads. They were ahead of us early, 14-8. It's incomplete, right? That we're still kind of painting that picture, but they have a lot of individual talent. And then Central, I guess we'll know more this week. I mean, they're going to have to bounce back in a hurry because it doesn't get any easier for them.
No, and Gordon South's going to be looking at that film, and like you said 3-man front for Gretna, kind of what Elkhorn South runs as well.
Their physicality was pretty impressive because I don't think Gretna is particularly deep.
Yeah,
but their top half is pretty good.
Yeah,
their top half is pretty dang on good. So. The consensus among some of the guys that watch high school that have seen all 3 of the Metro teams in terms of Burke, Central, and South. There's more than 3, but I'll stick with that theme just for a second. Think that Burke has the most upside. I don't quite know if I would agree with that yet, but they have some skilled pieces. The offensive and defensive lines I worry about a little bit.
Yeah, and they're pretty young up there and really inexperienced. You mentioned what North has.
Yeah, I mean, Bell's starting as a freshman.
Yeah. This is crazy because I know him since he was like little 4th grader.
Yeah.
But, it's pretty impressive that, I mean, what the North can do in the trenches. You've got Central. Obviously, they've got a couple of talented pieces there. Didn't work out this last week. Burke really struggled week 1, bounced back in week 2. I think that story is still kind of be told. We still got a lot to learn about all 3 of those teams. We're talk about the depth and how long will these teams be able to hold up. You've got new players working in, so maybe week 3, week 4, what kind of a difference will that be compared to week 1 and week 2 when you're making your first starts?
Yeah, you do have a good Metro story though. Omaha Benson. Starting out 2-0 with the comeback win, down 21 against Northwest, who also had a chance to start 2-0. We've got a 2-game win streak for Benson. That's pretty impressive. And for their efforts, they get to go to Fremont, who I know you kind of like Fremont, right? I know you particularly like them. They're offensively and at the quarterback spot, right?
I thought they were an interesting test to see last week what North Platte could do, just based on playing Class B the first match, step up to a Class A team that had won its first game. Obviously, Syntax a really good multi-sport athlete. I mean, baseball first, obviously one of the best shooters in the state on the basketball court. But, yeah, that was an impressive win by North Platte, just kind of taking it to Fremont. And Vince Genatone, again, 9 carries, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns.
They definitely have my attention.
Plus 12 tackles, back-to-back. I think that's back-to-back.
It's 29 in 2 games.
Yeah.
Is that pretty good?
Yeah. Back-to-back games with, I think, 100 yards from scrimmage on offense and double-digit tackles. Pretty good player, and I know he was down in Lincoln checking out the game this past week.
Yeah, I know everybody, kind of hems and haws about his size. I know one thing. He's a fantastic football player.
Yeah.
Probably just at 6 feet. Kind of wondering what he's going to play defensively, but he's a good football player.
Yeah.
Really good football player.
And North Platte this week, they got a tough one going to Kearney. That should be a fun one.
Yeah, something's got to give there, right? Kearney has been battle-tested early with a really good schedule.
Yeah.
They've had a good early slate to that schedule, so I'll be curious to see what happens with this one. And never an easy place to play. Chance for North Platte to show that they're for real.
Yeah, and that's what this game is. It's a chance for North Platte to show, hey, we belong in that top tier too. Obviously, I think Bell West is probably tier 1. And
yeah, I'll be curious to see how this game shakes out this week with Creighton Prep. Very good and stout up front. I'll be curious to see if Bellevue West can get the run game going. But they'll have some work to do on the back end if the tandem at quarterback with Johansson and Daniel Kalen are efficient in the passing game. We know about L.J. Richardson. Need a lot more consistency in the wide receiving core in terms of catching the football.
Yeah, and Creighton Prep obviously bounced back in a big way in week 2 against Papillion.
Yeah, they really handled them.
And it's not so much – it's just the fact that the way they looked while doing it and the way they dominated that game from Papillion the Vista, obviously, they're not as good as Omaha West Side at this point. I guess
they'll get money back.
But that's not a team that should get blown off the field like Prep did unless Prep did something right. And they got Chamar Brown going, 20 carries for 141 yards and a score.
He's a man.
Let him tote it this week.
I'm going to continue to say that he's going against a very good Bellevue West defense. And here's the thing, though. This is what I know about Chamar Brown. He is relentless. Yeah. So whatever you give him on like the 10th or 12th carry, he's going to be reciprocating on the 20 or 22nd. He's not going anywhere. Both sides will have to hang in there for the long haul.
And that's the question. Can Prep hold up defensively enough to where you don't panic and you don't get out of your game plan like we saw against you guys in week 1?
They got away from the run game.
So can they keep the score close enough to be able to do what they want to do? Because obviously we know Bellevue West has quick strike ability with all those tight ends and wideouts, and obviously L.J. Richardson can break one off at any point. So they're gonna have to. They could be tough. They're gonna have to scrap on every single down to make sure that Bellevue West doesn't get out to a 14, 17-point lead and then change the way that Prep has to play.
Omaha West Side travels to Papillion for their homecoming. That's an interesting team in West Side, right? Because they don't have a lot of gaudy offensive statistics, but they have some playmakers. They'll get one back this week for sure. I believe he'll be starting on both sides of the ball, and young Mr. Benning, which will help them offensively, but probably more so defensively, I think. And the secondary is kind of a banged-up unit at West Side with some key injuries, missing Tommy Connolly, who
good player.
One of the better young players. See, to watch he and Seantre Brown and some of these offensive linemen from Omaha North last week was a thing of beauty. If you like good, tough football, the way that they played that game. Kirk Kubrich, very good inside linebacker for Omaha West Side. Jamez Ross, very physical defensively. We'll see. Papillion on offense is interesting. They don't have a ton of tendencies. You can tell they're well coached, concept-wise, right, with Tim Williams and Gene Sir kind of back in the fold over there, which is kind of scary to think you put those two offensive minds together. But we'll see how it works with Lindemeyer and Money together if he's back playing, because they got some options.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about. They've got some good individual pieces. It's just a matter of, can they put the whole picture together? And Westside's a tough test to do it against, but we'll see if they can. We'll see how they handle last week. Will they let that beat them twice, or will they come out ready to correct what led to last week's 30-3 loss and come ready to play?
Yeah, the sneaky game within the game there is, I felt like Omaha West Side has seen two very good defensive lines, and Creighton Prep and Omaha North. Will they ramp up as they continue to get better with a lot of new guys starting, or will we be a little more beat up from the first 2 weeks of physicality? You never know how kids at that age will respond. Which matchup are you looking forward to the most in A?
Well, first, I think we got to talk about probably the big upset from the first week. Kind of the most surprising result was Papio South coming back to beat Lincoln East.
So that's twice now with Papio South, and you're right. Yeah. I don't want to be dismissive, because they have shown some resolve.
They're scrappy. Yeah.
They got down early against Papillion. They fought their brains out to get back into that game and get it to one score. And then coming back against a well-coached team in Lincoln East. And I said this before about Papillion South. They have good skill. I like their skill guys, especially out of those last two classes that they've gotten. If they find a way to handle some pressures up front, they have a chance to be a good football team.
Yeah. You met one of those young players, Devin Jones, running back.
Really good player. He's played with Caleb and Milliken for a long time in basketball. A good, strong, tough kid.
96 yards and a score on the ground, plus a 7-yard receiving touchdown. So good 100-yard day from scrimmage, couple of scores for him.
Very quiet, very unassuming.
Noah Walters, did what he did. Efficient, 309 yards, 4 scores, 1 pick.
But that's a ton at this level.
They had 19 carries for 8 yards rushing, and they just had no answer for the Papio South quarterback run game. Brady Fitzpatrick had 19 carries for 140 yards and a touchdown. He did not pass the ball particularly well. Had 2 scores, 2 interceptions, below 50% completion, but they could not stop him on the ground, and that ended up being the difference, I think.
Yeah, kind of sifting out the middle of the pack in Class A, in my opinion, is similar to Class B, where it appears to be kind of separating itself towards the top. There's that middle group that you think could get hot, that's talented enough, like an Aurora, that I would equate to maybe like a Creighton Prep, even Westside for that matter, who hasn't been overly impressive, just good enough. But the schedule is going to break in such a way where it'll give, and as they get healthy, we'll see how, I guess it's everybody else, right? Yeah. It's Bellevue West and Millard South is the conventional thought process. Yeah. Coaches don't want to say that, but it is what it is.
West Side, I think, still getting credit for, until they lose, typically they'll be up there. I think they're still number 2, depending on what rankings you look at. But, I think just in terms of what they've showed, Millard South is definitely, I think, the second
next,
best team. Yeah.
So you go West Side, Elkhorn South, Prep is probably in there somewhere. Lincoln Southeast.
I was going to say, Southeast is tough to figure out because they're winning, but they're not exactly.
They remind me a lot of us.
They're playing a lot of one-score games. Max Butenbach had a huge day, 30 carries, 170 yards, 2 scores.
Yeah, got his invite already early to come down to Iowa this week, and it's just like
Jake Applegate, I think 4 catches, 2 of them were touchdowns.
Yeah, I talked to him last night on Big Red Wrap-Up. He is, and you would agree with this because you've seen him up close numerous times. He's bigger than what he's listed.
He's a big dude.
He is,
He's got
right?
broad shoulders, big frame.
He's 6'4", 215 right now. He's every bit of that.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously he's got major athleticism as well on top of that big frame, so that's the way he's able to make plays all over the field on both sides of the ball. But
Now they've got an interesting one as they travel to Grand Island and see Coach Tomlin's bunch.
Yeah, so Omaha North, week 1, right?
Yeah.
They kind of
started behind, kind of wore them down as the game wore on.
And then a 28-21 win against Lincoln Southwest. So, again, 2 games, 2 pretty close games where the result was in doubt in the fourth quarter. So now they go to Grand Island, who pretty solid start. They've got Kyton Fife at quarterback and some good athletes out there.
I recognize the Fife name out there in Grand Island.
And that's a, I guess, little bit shorter drive from Lincoln than Omaha, but trip out there to Grand Island. So I think we'll learn a bit about Lincoln Southeast. Are they getting better? Are they building off of these first 2 weeks? Are they going to be able to go out there and dictate the way that game is played, or is Grand Island going to make it tough on them again?
Is there something that a team is kind of laying in the cut, right? We're not really sure what to make of Millard West. They scored 3 scores in a hurry against Millard North to kind of pull away from that one. I think it was 55 or 56-31. You have the tough opener in week 1. They get Millard South this week. Can we learn anything about either? Is it more about learning about Millard West, or do you think there's ways to exploit Millard South up front that Millard West can take advantage of?
Yeah, just after the way, just watching Millard South, you don't want to do too much transitive property, but Millard West lost Elkhorn South by 2 scores in week 1, and then saw what Millard
it's really difficult week 1 to week 2 too. So
saw what Millard South did against Elkhorn South. So and obviously Millard game, they're always gonna.
Yeah, I thought Millard North offensively was impressive against Millard West. I mean, that's quite a few points to be scored, and they found a way to get the ground game going.
32 points, but yeah. So I think we'll probably. I don't know that Millard West is. I think they'll put up a fight for sure. Again, that Millard rivalry. It's a good program, but I'd be surprised if that was pretty close. I think that would tell us a lot about Millard West if they're able to make that a competitive game.
All right, give it to me. Give me your must see in Class A and your must see in Class B.
Whew. Well, yeah, that's. I think probably if we're just looking at the Metro.
Prep Bellevue West.
Prep Bellevue West is probably the one. I think a couple of the ones that will probably be the most competitive games are kind of, we mentioned the Southeast at Grand Island. You've got the North Platte Kearney games. I think those are probably 2 of the more evenly matched or potentially competitive games. In B, I think it's Bennington Norris and Waverly at Elkhorn. And we'll learn, I think, a lot about Elkhorn.
It's a prove it week for Elkhorn, I think.
And we'll learn a little bit more about Bennington. I think if they knock this one off, then we have to seriously start thinking they're right up there. Like they're looking to make a run. So
and we've seen it before. And for as much as a team like Omaha Skutt can lay in the cut, I still feel like we talk about some other folks, but primarily maybe Jacob because we take them for granted.
Yeah, and. Thursday night game against Gross. That's probably not that probably plays a part into it this week at least.
Yeah, for sure. Sets up for a huge week 4, but we won't fast forward too fast. A lot of quality matchups in week 3. We hear the music. That's another week in the books of Nebraska Prep's postgame. That's Jacob Padilla. I am Damon Benning. We will be back next week.
Nebraska Preps postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
A Hurrdat Media Production.